Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute here. We'll let people get connected to the webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about simple steps for achieving and maintaining ITAR and CMMC compliance. I'm Scott Sawyer, one of the co-founders and the CTO here at Paperless Parts. We've been following CMMC pretty closely since 2018 now, something we've been really looking at and taken pretty seriously as it rolls out here. So what we'll be doing today is walking through a demo to really show you all some of the features in Paperless that help you help meet your CMMC requirements and just securely transfer data in and out of Paperless and just have a really secure and buttoned up approach to how you handle technical data for the parts you manufacture. So I'll just a couple quick slides to talk through, and then we'll jump into the demo, which is really the bulk of what we'll be doing today. So what is CMMC and why does it matter to me? If you're here, you've certainly heard of this. American manufacturers that are ITAR registered really have a target on their backs. People want the data that you have access to, the know-how to manufacture the parts that you're making on behalf of the DoD. So CMMC is a new initiative rolling out next year to contracts that really instructs the supply chain how they have to protect ITAR data. And the goal here is to protect that information and make sure that the supply chain doesn't become the weak link that allows adversaries to get a hold of this data and develop the systems that we've invested so much time and money into, to help make us the powerful country that we are. Paperless Parts, we have an approach to CMMC and cybersecurity that is going to help us meet all these requirements on your behalf. So there's a few pieces to it. The first is that we've implemented a system security plan that is based on the FedRAMP moderate standard, and that's required for certain DFARS rules like DFAR 7012 that you may have heard a little bit about. The second kind of column of our cybersecurity approach is we run on Amazon GovCloud. Our entire web application runs in a data center provided by Amazon that has been authorized by the US government for ITAR and other types of sensitive data. That data center is physically located in the US, it's staffed by US persons, and it is, like I mentioned, authorized at the FedRAMP high level. So this helps you meet that DFAR 7010 requirement for keeping this data in the United States. And finally, internally to Paperless Parts, we have US-based staff. So we're based in the US, certainly, and every employee on our team that is a system administrator or could possibly have access to our customers' data, whether that's in a support role or a sysadmin role or something like that, 100% US persons. So that means, working with our team would never be exporting data, which is a really important piece to CMMC and ITAR. So with that, we'll dive into the demo. And the idea here is I'm going to show you how the technical data that you're going to quote can come into Paperless Parts. You can quote based on that data. You can even share and collaborate with your vendors and even back with your customers. And then finally, you can send this digital quote to customers. And the whole way through, at no point are you, slinging ITAR data through inboxes and downloading it to different servers and desktops. And it really has a very clean thread through this whole process about where that data lives and how it's protected. So with that, let's dive into the demo. And by the way, if you have questions, anything you want to talk about, the demo is going to be fairly quick and we're going to leave a lot of time for Q&A. So feel free to submit those through the chat or through the Q&A feature of Zoom. And we'll do that right after the demo here. Also might be a good time. We want to poll the audience here and see where people are at with their CMMC preparations. So go ahead and give that an answer when the poll comes up. And with that, let's talk about RFQs, requests for quotations, which is something everyone loves here, right? So here's a sample website for a job shop called Acme Machining. And what we see on lots of job shop websites is get a quote form. And that might look something like this, where you've got a form, you're collecting information about your customer, maybe things like delivery date, and then uploading part files. So let's go ahead and fill this out. Yeah, so Paperless Products here has a part that they need manufactured, and we need our part by Christmas, of course. And yes, this project contains data subject to export control regulations. So now what I'm going to do, so I'm the customer here, is I'm going to upload 2 files that are, they're obviously not actually CUI, but we'll pretend they're CUI. One moment. Let me grab my files here. I'm just going to show you how this can come into the system. So here's some demo parts. It's going to be a step file, a 3D file, and then a PDF. So let's upload the step file first into our parts here. And we're requesting a quote for a couple different quantities. This happens to be a machined part. We'll pick a material. Let's say this is going to be aluminum. We're going to add a finish. We want this anodized. And while we're at it, let's add a supporting file here. We're going to go ahead and let's see. How do I drop a file in? Hang on. Where are these files located? Give me a second here. As soon as I find this file, we're going to drop it in. There we go. All right. So there are our files. And we heard about this from a webinar, of course, and let's go ahead and submit this RFQ. So here's a way for your customers to submit files directly through your website. What's cool about this feature, this is called our Smart RFQ form, is that at no point do these files have to touch an email inbox, for example. You don't necessarily need to mess around with portals and other ways that customers might send you parts. We hear a lot that people will send encrypted zip files that are password protected, and it's a pretty clunky way to send data around. Oftentimes, the customer might just send you the password to the same exact inbox as they sent the encrypted zip file. Well, you know, if an attacker has access to your inbox, what good does that do? So this really streamlines that whole process. And the way you add this form to your website is you drop in a code snippet, and when someone uploads a file through that form, it goes directly to Paperless Parts server. So it's not as if you have to worry about the security of those files the way you maintain your website. So you can keep doing that the way you do it today, whether you maintain your website yourself or you work with maybe a marketing company. None of that really has to be too overly concerned about ITAR. So with that, what's great about that is this file now goes directly into Paperless Parts. So here we are, and we'll find, here's this quote that I just submitted, this RFQ, and we're going to go ahead and click into this. So here is Paperless Parts quoting capability that you're probably all familiar with. And you can see, here's the step file that I uploaded. It's this part. It's already marked as ITAR because when I filled out that form, I said, yes, it contains export controlled information. And here it is already set up. It's been analyzed. There's already this initial costing that we can go ahead and edit. And all the files are here. So you're not downloading them, unpacking them, uploading them back up to Paperless Parts. They're just ready to go. So here's some stuff you're familiar with. We've got our router built out. We've got some costing here in place already. And this is interesting. So the customer requested an anodized finish. Maybe that's a service that you might outsource to a finishing vendor. Okay, well, so we start thinking, how are we going to get enough technical data to our finisher so that they can provide a price for us? Well, we've got a tool that can help you with that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the technical data that we've submitted, or that our customers have submitted for this RFQ. So again, this is our part viewer. You're probably familiar with this. You can view the step file, zoom in, do a lot of that stuff that that you would typically do with maybe a desktop-based CAD system. We give you all the manufacturability warnings and things like that. And if you have an associated associated PDF file, like the drawing that goes with the 3D model, you can view that right here in the same viewer. So a very common thing. So now I need to send this out to my vendor to get an anodizing quote. You can actually do that right through Paperless Parts. You don't need to download these files, attach them to an email, and then send them out through Outlook or something. You can securely share these with your vendor right through Paperless Parts. And there's some other interesting features here. So let's say a very common thing we hear is you want to redact certain information from a drawing before sending that to your vendor. So maybe this title block has sensitive information about the customer or where this part's going. We can go ahead and just redact the title block before we send this to our vendor. So I'm going to go ahead, I clicked edit, and then we have this redact tool right here. I'm just going to black out this entire title block, right? So now I've blacked that out, and this is a true redaction. This is not just some, well, I didn't do it yet, but once we click check here, this is not just a black box that went over the part of the PDF that then the vendor can just delete in Acrobat, for example. Once I save this as a redacted file, that data, the information behind that box is completely removed. So that's a really important feature when you redact something. So let's go take a look now. Here's the redacted file that I created. So I still have the original file. I can still see this information, which is important. But now I have a redacted version of the same file, and you can see that this is in fact blacked out. Now, if I were, like I said, if I were to download this, the information behind that box is completely unrecoverable. It is not, the information is simply not in the redacted file. This is a very secure way to take sensitive data out of a file. Now what we're going to do is share this with our vendor. So the way you can do that in Paperless Parts is called an external share. So let's go ahead and start a new chat. And chats exist in the context of a technical data package. So let me show you what that means. I'm going to come here and I'm going to name a new chat here. I'm going to call it anodizing quote. I'm going to invite my vendor, which would already be in that list once you're set up. And we're going to add a note here. Anodizing quote, I need a piece price and lot charge. And I could also send this to multiple vendors if I want to get several quotes for the finishing. And now what's interesting is there's some permissions here. I'm really able to control what this vendor has access to and for how long. So you can see here, allow one-click download. I can put some download restrictions on this share so that the vendor is able to look at that file, but the download button will not be there. They're not going to be able to easily just download this to their desktop or shared drive where it may persist and not be secured properly. So I could let them do that, but by default, that's disabled. And then what I'm also able to do is choose which files they have access to when I share this. So right now, I'm going to give them the 3D model, and I'm also going to give them the redacted drawing. And I pick when this expires. So I'm expecting to get a quote pretty quickly here. By default, these last 7 days, I can make it even shorter. I can make it longer if I need. And once this chat is expired, they no longer have access to this data. So let's go ahead and start the chat. Now, what happens here, if the vendor already has a Paperless Parts account, it goes right to them, they'll get the notification. If they don't have a Paperless Parts account, they'll be sent a link that allows them to sign up, create their account, set a password. That's a free account. We're not asking our vendors to buy Paperless Parts or adopt Paperless Parts. Their account will be different from yours. You're not giving them access. You're not adding them to your team or anything. They don't see anything other than what you just shared with them. And their Paperless Parts looks a bit different. They won't see quotes and orders and so on. They're just going to have access to a part library and files that have been shared with them. So now I've created this chat. So now it's not just, I didn't just share the files. I've actually shared this, this chat here. So what I can do is go ahead and even annotate these files, either the 3D files or the drawing here. So let's say, what's a common thing you might need to tell your vendor about? Let's say we need to tell them about a location that needs to be masked. So that's a pretty common issue. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw on this drawing where there might be masking. And I can go ahead and add an annotation here and say, please note masking required here. Of course, not on this print, but you've all seen prints where it might say that. I could, and then go ahead and send it. And now my vendor is going to see this comment. They're going to be able to click this annotation and see exactly what I was talking about. If they're over in the 3D file and they see my comment and they click it, it'll take them right to that location again. And also keep in mind, this is the redacted print. They can ask me questions, real-time chat here. So the benefit there is we're not going back and forth in email, attaching files, adding comments, things like that. All the data is still captured right here in Paperless, and I'm able to have this real-time chat with my vendor, answer any questions, and eventually get that quote I need to be able to send my quote out, which is really what we're after here. So that's how I would do that. I'm going to go ahead and close this viewer here, come back to my quote, and this actually might be a good time. Let's ask another poll to the audience here. We're curious how you're feeling about the CMMC timeline. Do you feel like you've got the time you need to meet the requirements as they start hitting your contracts next year? So now that we've got our vendor quote, maybe we come in and update our pricing here. And now we're really ready to send this quote to our customer. So you've probably seen our digital quote. Maybe you haven't seen it with an export controlled part on it. So let's go ahead. Let's go back to our quote here. I'm going to go ahead and add some lead time information here. Let's go ahead and preview this quote. So this is the digital quote that will go to your customer who requested it. And typically on a Paperless Parts digital quote, you would see a thumbnail of the part. And there's even a way, by seeing more details here, where the recipient of the quote can interact with that part in 3D, spin it around, zoom it, and so on. With export controlled data that you've marked in Paperless Parts, that information is redacted from this quote. So what's great about that, the real benefit of that, is this quote is not CUI, does not contain ITAR, which means it's very easy for the customer to share. And it's really important when you're trying to win business to not create unnecessary friction in that sales process. So you want your customer to be able to easily open this. You don't want them to have to go to a portal or create accounts or anything. You just want this to be able to flow to their inbox. And also you want them to be able to share it internally at their company, right? If they have to go to different folks in the purchasing department or go show it to an engineer and get some feedback, you want the quote to be very easily shared within their company. And this allows that to be the case because we've redacted that sensitive technical data. From there, the customer can go ahead and order the part, right? So we have the ability to check out. We provide this e-commerce feature that would allow that order to come in. Of course, a lot of your customers may just send you a PO, and that's totally fine too. So the way you would handle that in Paperless is we call that facilitating an order. You can come in here and specify what they wanted, create the order, specify how they're going to pay. Maybe there's some different bill to information that's associated with the customer and ship to information, how they might want it shipped, and so on. And we can finally just complete the order based on all the information that I would have read off of a PO. And once that order is placed, the quote changes status. Now it's considered an accepted quote. A new order is created here in Paperless Parts. And again, when we think about technical data and how it flows, if you've got an ERP integration, and we support all the modern big name ERPs in the industry, this information will automatically flow from Paperless Parts right to your ERP system. That includes typically customer information, routers. In some cases, it might include some of those actual files if you bring in files to your ERP system. And again, all of that didn't require downloading this to a particular location on your network or sending any emails or anything. That's completely managed by Paperless Parts and the integration. So, all of that kept it secure the whole way through. So really, CMMC is all about your policies and procedures and your system boundary, right? You've got a long list of controls you have to meet, but you don't necessarily have to apply those controls to every piece of technology you own, right? The controls follow the CUI data. So if you're able to keep CUI out of certain systems, that makes your life a lot easier as you prepare for this. So Paperless Parts lets you move more of your systems out of scope for CMMC because we can handle that data for you, right? So, if you think about what a lot of shops are kind of facing this decision is what's in scope. if you want to put your entire Microsoft environment, right? So that's your email, your shared drive, Microsoft Teams, maybe Office 365. If you're intending to put all of that in Boundary for CMMC, and you've got, dozens of employees, maybe 100 employees, that's a really significant cost. That costs thousands of dollars a month to move all of that into Microsoft's GCC high environment. And this may be an opportunity for you to keep more of that out of scope for CMMC and have Paperless Parts manage that export control technical data for you. So that's the demo. Look, I would love to answer some questions, and maybe we'll add one more poll question here and just see how folks felt about whether that, how helpful that demo was. Let us know how we can, we always want to improve and make things more helpful for folks. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has. Let's see. We have Allie on the line on our side. Let's see, have any questions? Oh, we do have some Q&A here. All right. Let's see. All right, if a shop needs to be NIST compliant, does that mean Paperless Parts needs to be NIST compliant, or Paperless Parts, you see the technical specs? Yeah, so the rules are quite specific about if you're going to use a cloud, like a SaaS tool, like Paperless Parts, exactly what requirements we need to meet, or any cloud provider needs to meet for you to be able to use us to store or process export control information, CUI, as they're calling it. There's the documentation about this is still in draft form, so there could be changes. We expect the assessment criteria to be finalized and this final rule to come out early next year. But the way it stands today, the current draft, is that your cloud service provider needs to be provide security equivalent to FedRAMP moderate. That's what it's called. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're getting all prepared for that. We've engaged with some of the best FedRAMP assessors in the business to help us get all that documentation ready ahead of your CMMC assessment. So the way this will work, as you get assessed for CMMC, that assessor is going to be asking about all the different systems, all the different components in your information system architecture. They'll notice Paperless Parts. They'll ask you if there's any export control data in Paperless. If you say yes, they'll then ask questions about what documentation is available to show that they're meeting the requirements. And as the requirements get finalized, we'll be preparing that documentation so that you're prepared for your assessment and can have Paperless Parts be in scope for your system. Is the smart RFQ form part of the normal Paperless Parts platform? It is. If you would like to get that on your website, you can reach out to support and we can give you that. It's just a code snippet that you would put on your website. So absolutely, you can get that on your website if you'd like. Can the supplier go into the chat after the data view expires? They will still, they will not be able to see the technical data, but they'll see that chat existed. And I don't think I can quickly show you what that looks like, but they're able to request access if they want to go back into that. And you would be prompted to, if you want to extend that access to them, change the expiration date. Compare this part's flow down data to a supplier after the part is awarded. You mean like to that vendor, for example, I think is what you mean. Sure. Yeah, you could share that at any time. You can change the expiration date. And maybe there's more data you'll give them after you win the job, for example, that wasn't necessary for quoting, and you can go ahead and do that. You could share that at that point. And again, with the expiration date, it all kind of disappears once they don't need it anymore. Does ITAR require GCCI? Well, that's a good question for for your IT team. There are a couple different flavors of the Microsoft Government Cloud. What we've been hearing is for normal users, I think it's called E3 is the level you need, and for administrators, E5. That's a common thing we've been hearing. I think there's a lot to be determined there. And also I've heard that Microsoft is looking at providing a more specific like DIB environment, defense industrial base environment, that may be a little bit more reasonable cost and only cover the CMMC requirements versus like FedRAMP High, which is a much stronger set of requirements. How do I control who in my company has access to ITAR information? That's a great question. We're working on a updated security package to get ready for CMMC. That is going to introduce some permissions features that would allow you to get more fine-grained about who has access to the ITAR data. Today, if you have export control data in your Paperless Parts account, you would need to make sure that your team only contains US persons. But stay tuned for some new features in that area. And what are other examples of CUI that could potentially find their way into PP other than model and technical notes? Great question. As I'm sure you're all aware, as part of CMMC and this larger CUI initiative coming out of the government, the data that CUI is supposed to be very clearly and explicitly marked as CUI. I think you've all noticed that the data you're receiving from your tier one or your defense prime, or maybe directly from the government, is not really marked the way it necessarily needs to be. And it's not very explicit about what CUI and what is not CUI. So we're anxious to see what comes out of the Department of Defense, how this stuff gets labeled, whether it continues to be labeled properly. And that'll help determine what you might consider CUI within Paperless Parts, whether you're putting, for example, manufacturing notes that you might consider CUI, or things like that. At the quote level, so, and that's perfectly fine, by the way. So if you're within Paperless Parts building out a quote and you got CUI on there, that's fine. It's in an environment where that's acceptable. Where you want to be careful would be what you put directly on that quote that you're sending back to the customer. I think you want to keep that free of CUI. So you would just be careful to, not put something sensitive in the notes that are visible to the customer there. Yeah, thanks. Those were fantastic questions. So I think it sounds like a lot of us are thinking about the same exact issues as we get ready for this. Ali, is there a recording available? I believe this will be available.
Yes.
Yep.
It'll be sent out to everyone by tomorrow.
And actually, let me go ahead and pull back up that. So I'll pull up my contact information as well as a URL where these series, where this stuff lives. Go ahead and share that again. So again, I'm Scott. I've been working on this stuff a while. Feel free to email me if you think of questions after we log off here, and I'll try my best to tell you what we're hearing in the field here. So if there's any final questions, happy to answer them. Oh, one last question, definitely. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for keeping it interactive with the questions. We really appreciate that. So I don't feel like I'm talking just into a screen here. And a quote, when the customer sends an email, how do we make the part? Oh, yeah. Great question. Did I just stop sharing? Give me a second. I'll show you exactly how to do that. So let me share my screen one more time. Okay, so here's Paperless Parts. If you've gotten a file some other way, let me create a new quote here. So this could be a customer sent you to some portal where you can download it. This could be they emailed it to you in some form. If they've emailed you one of those encrypted zip files, with a password, you're going to want to decrypt that, unpack that zip file on your PC, but then you can come here and upload it. So let me go ahead. When you upload a file in Paperless, I'll just drop that same file in. It's actually right here, export controlled ITAR. If you're not seeing this, reach out to our team. Depending on the subscription you have, our team can help you figure out how to get this to appear. You may have the subscription you need, but we just simply haven't noted that you're ITAR registered, and we can go ahead and do that. But all you need to do is just check this box, and then that will be noted as export controlled. If let me go ahead. Let's say you forgot to do that. I'll actually upload this, so I didn't check it. You can do it after the fact as well. We'll let this upload. And when I expand this quote item, where did we hide this? There is a export control. There it is. Export controlled is right here. It's going to warn you that that's going to change things. If you've got this part in multiple quotes, it's going to kind of trickle that data into all of them. And when you hit confirm, now sure enough, this is now marked as export controlled. Can you change closed quotes as ITAR? You probably can't change the quote, but you could go to the part library and mark that technical data as export controlled, which would be a good step, because you do want to accurately, reflect, accurately tag data as CY or not. But I don't think, once you've sent the quote, this all becomes read-only. So this checkbox will be locked. But again, the part itself in your part library, you can modify the data on the part file itself as well. So I can, where is it? There is a way to change it here. I'll have to find it for you. Maybe it's here. Yeah, there it is. So you can kind of unmark the data or mark it. Awesome questions. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate you attending and participating. Again, feel free to reach out to me or support, and we can help you get your account set up if you need something there, or just answer your general questions about CMMC as we all figure this out together and get ready for this to start hitting contracts next year.